Welcome to Podcast for Fun. This is the show where we dive into the passion, the process, and the journeys of creative storytellers as they bring their stories to life. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are joined by a talented writer and illustrator and founder of Shrimp Cult Press, Peter DeVoost. Thank you so much for being here, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. So yeah, like you said, I founded Shrimp Cult Press. We're a small independent publishing company here in Vancouver, and we focus mostly on like graphic novels and like tabletop role-playing modules. So if you think of like Dungeons and Dragons and uh, it's story settings for Dungeons and Dragon games. So I've been doing that for I think 3 years now. That's kind of my side gig. By day, I'm working in marketing and communications at UBC for the moment.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's it's been a wild journey starting this company.
What compelled you to start this company?
So I've always been like a big fan of books in general. Oddly enough, not comics as much. Like I've always liked comics, but I've never been like a huge comics fan. Um, But I've always loved books and I've always loved visual art.
Mhm.
And I was a software engineer before this. I quit my job and I was looking for my next career, right?
Mhm.
And so I was always interested in visual art, so I started taking classes online. Like during the pandemic, a lot of the um, like really high profile like art school classes and stuff went online. So I started taking some of those and I thought I was going to go into visual effects.
Yeah.
And, being the sort of like engineering mind that I am, I was like, okay, I need to really master the foundational aspects of art first. I need to know my color theory. I need to know perspective. I'm going to have to do a bunch of drawing and painting so that when I do these crazy visual effects, like I
Mhm.
understand color theory and light and shadow and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I found out that I actually really liked it. Um, I thought that, before that I couldn't draw and that I couldn't paint and I was just like not capable of it at all.
Mhm.
And I started doing it. I was like, you know what? This is actually a skill like anything else. And if you practice it, you get better.
Mhm.
And if I just practice this a lot, then I'll just get better at it. Uh, and so I started doing that. And instead of going to visual effects, I pushed myself a little bit more toward animation. And I was kind of interested in 2D animation. And I enrolled in a program for that for, I think it was maybe a year and a half, 2 years,
Mhm.
um, which was very helpful and I learned a lot, but ultimately animation wasn't really where I wanted to go. And what I was looking for, I think, was a little bit more like autonomy. Like in my career as a software engineer, I got to make a lot of decisions and um, I got to sort of build like systems and make sort of business level decisions. And I really liked that. I realized, in animation, I wouldn't get to do that unless I was like a director or a producer or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I started looking around for what was next, what was I going to do? And it turns out that I have a friend who had a graphic novel idea that he really wanted to publish. And
Mhm.
he said, yeah, no, I want to publish this graphic novel and I want to start a publishing company to do it. So, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it.
Mhm.
So, we originally went into the idea together. Um, and we were going to start this publishing company. And that was kind of the foundation of Shrimp Cult Press was that initial conversation, that idea.
Mhm.
Uh, Unfortunately, he ended up getting busy with other stuff and, kind of went on to a different path. But I just kept Shrimp Cult Press going. And eventually I published his book. He finished it. It's Pizza Pigeon: The Search for the Lost Parm. So that's kind of the book that started it all.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you went from being like a software engineer to a animator to a publishing company founder,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
That's a crazy route, man.
It is a wild journey, let me tell you. Yeah.
So you're doing this as a side gig now, right? For now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what are you doing to, I guess, be more seen by people?
Yeah. That's a great question. And honestly, that's something that I struggle with.
Mm.
Um, I'm really good at like pretty much every other part of running the company. I'm great at like, figuring out the process for getting a book printed and like project management, the timelines and all of this stuff, the editing, the writing, the art. I can do all of that
Yeah.
stuff. The promotion is really hard for me. Because I just want to make the stuff. I don't
Mhm.
want to necessarily talk about it. I don't want to like, do TikToks or whatever. I just want to make cool stuff. And so that's been challenging. Lately, I'm trying to, spend more time on Instagram and like make some reels and stuff like that. So that's my current, avenue of self-promotion.
Mhm.
Uh, I've been, I do improv as a hobby, and so I've been trying to find ways to blend that with the parts of my work that I don't like. So, um, the idea being that if I make marketing fun for me, then I'll do
Mhm.
it more often. So that's where I'm trying to like get some traction with reels and all that kind of stuff. But it's difficult. It's really a challenge.
I feel like you have to be a social media influencer at the same time, so it's like a third gig, whatever,
It's
right?
so true. It's so true. I feel like it's a whole other business. Like, there was a time, and, I feel like, an old man here, there was back in my day. Um, but there was a time when, if you were a publisher, if you were a writer, if you were a baker or whatever, that was the thing that you did. And maybe
Mhm.
you paid for advertising, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you're just in a community. But
Yeah.
now it's like anytime you start a business that's, B2C, business to customer sales, it feels like you have to also be a content creation network. Which, I mean, there are fun aspects of that, but it's also really hard, especially if you're on your own. You're effectively running at least two businesses.
hmm I mean, I don't know if you see, but all my social media, I post every single, I try to post every single day. I do miss some days, but I try, and I feel like it's working to an extent. I mean, how else are people finding this podcast, is what I
Yeah.
tell myself, right? And I don't know what I'm doing. I just grab a clip and then I watch a video. Oh, this is how you should edit, and then people will watch it, and then I post it. I'm like, that was a lie because no one's watching it. You know, what am I doing wrong? And then I just rinse and repeat like every single day.
You
And
know, I think that's it, right? It's fake it till you make it, and it's such a cliche,
mhm,
but I think that's really true. You kind of have to pretend that you're already doing the thing. And actually, that's one of the things that I learned when I first started my publishing company was
mhm,
um, when I talked to people as I was starting the company, I would say, like, I'm starting a publishing company, or I want to start a publishing company, or I want to publish people's books. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of make this real. And I'm just going to say, I'm a publisher. I run a publishing company. Even though, I had never sold a book before, the book I was working on wasn't finished. It was like, no, I am a publisher. And
yeah,
I noticed people's attitudes change a little bit.
yes,
Instead of like, oh, okay, you're starting a publishing company, it was like, oh, that's cool. They want to know more about it. Um, I think that's kind of the same thing with social media. You have to sort of be the thing that you want before it's actually true.
yes, that's so true. I did the same thing too. So you said that you used to read a lot of like visual novels and stuff.
Yeah, a bit. So, when I was a kid, I was really into like the Franco-Belgian comics, like Tintin and Asterix and um, like a little bit of Valerian.
Mhm.
Uh, and, that's kind of what I grew up with because, my dad is French and that's what he got me into. Um, so that was what I originally thought of as comics. I never really read any of the like American superhero comics or like manga or any of that kind of stuff. And then I think in like, somewhere in the like mid to late 2000s, I got into a little bit more web comics. So there's a Canadian content creator, well, comic creator named Jeff Jacques who creates this comic called Questionable Content, which has been running for God a long time now.
Uh-huh.
And there's very little that's questionable about it. It's really more of like I don't want to say it's a soap opera. It's like a sitcom. Sitcom maybe is the right, but it's delightful. And I've read it faithfully for all these years, and like that was kind of what I thought of as comics at the time. And yeah, I mean, I've always loved it, but it's always been like a small aspect of my life. I never really thought of myself as like a comics person.
So what's the questionable content about?
Questionable content. I think it originally started as it's this guy who's kind of a music nerd and like he wants to be a music critic and he runs into this woman in some sort of like uh, I don't know, some sort of strange circumstance, and then they end up, being friends and roommates, and it just builds from there, and it's changed over the years, and now like there are like sentient AIs who are walking around in android bodies and stuff like that, and they're just characters in the story, and it's just a sitcom, it's very like low drama. It's funny, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not super funny, but it's just something to check in with regularly and see what these characters are up to, and I love it. It's great.
Have you ever watched Seinfeld before?
A long time ago, yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
feel about that show?
Um, you know, uh, I don't think I've seen enough of it to really like form a balanced opinion, but I know that
Uh,
it's so foundational in just the sitcom world, right? Like it feels like an important work. But I don't know if I could say anything about like the show itself. I think I enjoyed like the couple of episodes that I have seen, but it's one of those things that's been on my list. Like I really should like dig into this. I should watch the whole thing and haven't gotten there yet.
I feel like the writing in there is so tight. Everything makes sense. To me at least. I watched the whole thing because I like to binge shows. Like when I watch a show, I just watch through the whole thing. So I watched through the whole thing in a very short amount of time. Not that short, but I think it's like a couple months. Not that
Okay.
short, but I finished the whole thing and I didn't like the ending, but I just overall I thought the show was very entertaining and very tight. There's like
It's a
five
pretty
stories that happened all at once and uh somehow they managed to make it all super easy to understand.
right.
I was very impressed by it.
It's a pretty long running show, right? I mean, how many seasons are there?
I think there's like nine. There's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's really long. Um, yeah, I mean, I can imagine that. I hear that it's great.
Do you have any like shows or stories that you think is a masterpiece?
Oh boy. Um, Masterpiece. I'm sure that I do. I mean, so maybe I can start with this. I was always a really big fan of Star Trek. Um, I don't know if I would call it a masterpiece, but
Okay.
it feels important, culturally, and um, obviously there are so many different like writers and directors and actors and everything for all the Star Trek series, but like there's something really important there.
Mhm.
So I've always loved Star Trek for that reason. It's always so like hopeful and optimistic, and it tries to tackle big issues. Um, a masterpiece. Um, yeah, you know what? So you like specifically in movies or TV or just anything?
Anything.
Okay. So I really like Alison Bechdel's graphic memoirs. So like Fun Home. She also wrote The Secret to Superhuman Strength.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she's just incredible. She has this like so they're graphic memoirs. They're stories of her life, and they're pretty somber. They're pretty sad. Like she's covering some really difficult topics about her childhood and growing up, but the way she does it is so artful and masterful, and like there are some like sort of comedic moments, but it's really engaging, and she tells this really difficult story in a really engaging and I think kind of gentle way. Like she
Mm.
manages to keep a consistent, like sort of somber tone, but tell you this story in a way that you just can't stop reading it. I think she's an incredible, an incredible artist, an incredible author, and um, I'm sure that that's not a hot take. A lot of people think that about her. She's incredible, but yeah, I would consider her works to be masterpieces.
Do you have an example from the book that really captivated you?
Oh, hmm. I wouldn't say that I do. I think the work as a whole is what I think is a masterpiece. Her storytelling is incredible. She manages to uh to work in references to like other stories, like classic stories, and sort of tie them into her own story.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I think it's more about the tone and the storytelling than any specific moment in any of the books.
So like the somber tone, you'd say?
Yeah, which I feel like I'm not selling it very well. Nobody sort of goes to a bookstore and like, man, I'd really like something somber today. I want to be depressed.
No,
But
there are some people like
I
that.
suppose, yeah,
I want to write. I was like, sometimes I want look for a movie. I'm like, I want something that's gonna make me cry, you know,
yeah, yeah,
emotional, but not like in the Notebook way, in like the existential way, if that
yeah,
makes
I get
sense.
that. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, maybe that's maybe Fun Home is for you. I recommend it. I think it's great.
What was the book called again?
It's called Fun Home.
Fun Home
Yeah,
by
Alison Bechdel.
Fun
If
Home
you've
by
ever
Alison.
heard of the Bechdel test, she's the one who created it. So the Bechdel test is it's I think it started as a joke actually. It's a way to tell whether a movie or like any piece of fiction is like I don't know what the exact word is, but like blatantly not feminist or like awful. And I think that the test is like is there a scene in the movie where there are two women who talk about something that isn't a man or like isn't a relationship? And that seems like a really low bar, but there are a lot of movies that do not pass the Bechdel test, which is really disappointing.
What's a famous movie that doesn't pass the Bechdel test?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
I should search up the test myself later.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's like a Wikipedia list of like every movie that fails the Bechdel test. And yeah, I bet it's pretty long.
I didn't expect you to say your favorite like story was something that's so like I guess not depressing, but emotional, I'd say. Because isn't your like graphic novel like Chicken and Brunch or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting you say that. So yeah, that's true. I love telling silly stories, and like I have realized about myself that if I don't find something like goofy and wacky in a story that I'm writing, then I won't be interested. So, in order to really engage with it, I have to come up with some sort of silly off the wall concept, or I don't feel like it's any good.
Mm.
Um, but every once in a while, well, I wouldn't say every once in a while. Outside of that, I enjoy like, this range of things. Um, I remember I was talking to a horror graphic novelist at a convention. I think it was at VanCaf. He writes all this like really dark stuff and, blood and guts and gore and like supernatural horror, all this kind of stuff. And I was looking at his books and I was like, I'm really drawn to this. Like this is really, really cool what you're doing here. And I said, like it's funny because I publish like really lighthearted, silly stuff that is the complete opposite of this. He was like, yeah, that's always how it works. The people who are into like the fun, silly stuff have this other like darker side where they're into all the dark stuff. And I think there's some truth to that.
Do you know Hayao Miyazaki?
Yeah.
So you know how he writes all these like fantastical, happy stories?
Yeah.
Well, not really happy, but like very fantastical, like imaginary stories that are like for kind of for kids, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, in real life, he's like the complete opposite. He's a very cynical man.
I've heard that. I've heard that he can be mean sometimes and that he's very like he's a perfectionist and like things have to be done a certain way and
Hmm.
he's very serious and yeah, I've heard that. And it's really interesting. Like where is that well within him that creates this like fun, whimsical stuff
Hmm.
when his the rest of his life is not like that. I think that's fascinating.
But I mean, I don't see you as like a depressed person though. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
There are days. There are
Well,
definitely
everyone
days.
has their days, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think of myself that way either. I mean, I think if anything, what really speaks to me is the fun, silly stuff. But
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting to like engage with the breadth of the human experience. Like that's ultimately what drove me to start Shrimp Cult Press was I think stories are just like the most important thing possibly of anything. Like we, what do we do that isn't for the stories that we want to tell and the
Yeah.
stories that we want to create with humanity? Um, I think that I think that storytelling is just such a deeply ingrained part of our culture, and like that involves looking at stories from a lot of different angles,
Hmm.
and just learning about the human experience.
If you knew you wanted to be like kind of an artist all your life, why did you get into software engineering?
Right. Well, so I actually didn't know that I wanted to be an artist all of my life. It's really interesting. Well, I think it's interesting.
Okay.
I always thought I was an engineer, and like that part of that goes into, Star Trek. Like I loved Star Trek as a kid. I was so excited about it,
Mhm.
and like a lot of my family were, in the sciences or engineers, and somehow I just assumed from a very young age, like, okay, well, I'm going to be an engineer and I'm going to go build, like a, faster than light spaceship and I'm going to explore the stars. Great, cool, career done. Um, and there are aspects of engineering that I really do enjoy. Like there is a creative element to it. I find some of the problem solving really interesting. And
Mhm.
so for a long time, I just did that. And there were bumps in the road where I realized like, okay, I never thought that it wasn't for me, but I just didn't engage with it in the same way that a lot of other people did. I was more interested in the bigger picture of the software than a lot of my software engineering counterparts, and I found like their sort of analytical approach to a lot of things very sometimes narrow-minded or like just frustrating sometimes.
Mhm.
And it took me a lot of years to realize like while I'm interested in these things in software, and while I'm good at it, maybe it's not the thing that really is my passion. Like maybe I'm more of an artist. And I remember doing uh, this like career change, like career assessment test shortly before I quit my job as a software engineer. And it gives you like percentages. So basically, the way the test works is they have all these questions, and you answer all the questions, and they'll sort of bucket people into different categories. So they look at people's professions and say, okay,
Mhm.
well, 90% of people who are artists answer this way, right? And then once they have that data based on your answers, they put you in those buckets based on which ones you correlate with.
Mhm.
And I was like 98% in the artist category, and was like, it makes sense now why I'm not happy. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was just kind of a roundabout way of getting to where I am. I mean, I think it's a voyage of self-discovery, and you never know. Um, yeah, I mean, you learn about yourself, and you never know where you're gonna end up. So it was a really roundabout way to get to where I am now.
What kind of questions were on that career test?
Oh man, I think it was stuff like, what work you enjoy? Like, do you enjoy like analyzing a problem or in really fine detail or thinking about it in a broad way? Um, do you like building things with your hands? Would you rather uh, sit in a meeting or like crunch numbers on a spreadsheet, like stuff like that? So it's kind of like opposing sides of a particular task that are getting to like your working style and what interests you.
You know, it's funny. I think I took that test before.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was called the strong inventory assessment or
Yeah.
strong interest inventory. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
I took it and it told me I was like a leader or something. And I'm like, why am I a leader? I like to draw. So,
That's interesting though. I mean, you're running a podcast, right? And that's kind of that's a little bit of a leadership role. Like you're taking charge and you're kind of in control of this like thing that you're creating, right? That's a leadership role, I think. I can see it.
thank you. Well, you know what? I feel like a lot of people call me a hustler, and I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's true?
See, the funny thing is, I feel like I don't work hard enough, and everyone else thinks I work a lot. But then I try to take it, but I always think like, no, I could work harder. I don't think you're right. I feel like I could work harder. But I do notice that the people around me that do actually work hard feel the exact same way as me. And then the people who are a little lazy, in my opinion, they think they're already doing enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that that's something that pushes you to work harder is, it's a perfectionism and like sometimes imposter syndrome, and sometimes it's not good for you. And I've had to learn that lesson. Um, but I definitely experienced that, Um, there are days at work when people will give me feedback. They're like, "Oh, you've done such good work on this thing, and like, we really couldn't have done this without you." And I'm like, "Oh, really? I feel like I was slacking off. I feel like I should have done these five other things."
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Do you feel like you're a perfectionist?
I definitely have perfectionist like leanings. Um, I think I've worked hard on not being a perfectionist.
Hmm.
Um, and I've been able to strike sort of the balance between like there are these 10 things that I want to do to like fix this book or to make this drawing better or whatever. Um, but I have to ultimately get it done. So I would say that I lean that way, but I'm not a perfectionist all the time. So there's a balance point where the stress of like I need to get this done or else it's not going to happen outweighs the stress of like this isn't up to my standards, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. You know, I try to give myself deadlines.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that can help. The trouble that I run into with self-imposed deadlines is that I know they're self-imposed. So sometimes, I'm like, okay, this has to be done by Tuesday, and Tuesday comes around and like five things have come up and I've had to deal with something at work and I've had to deal with something at home and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I could push it a day or two. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, it's a good solution for that if you tell somebody else.
yeah. Accountability. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, accountability can help.
I have that with this is different, but I have it with the gym. So if I don't show up at the gym and then I show up again, everyone tells me like, "What happened to you the other day? Are you okay?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yes, I was just lazy. I'll be back. I don't want to experience this anymore."
Yep. Yeah. That's so nice. Like, your community supports you, right? I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
So I feel like it's good. Like I always tell like someone, one of my friends, I'm like, I'm gonna finish this by tomorrow. I'm gonna show it to you, and I'm not even done, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just texting them this, and they're like, okay. And the next day they're like, so Sophia, where is it? And I'm like, mm. And I show them whatever I finished, and then I had to get it done. So I do finish it. I've never like not finished it, but that's to me is really good accountability. Because I think back, like, what was pushing me to finish all those homework when I was in high school? Oh, I didn't want to disappoint the teacher.
Hmm.
Gotta create my own teacher or whatever in real life now for myself because everything I do is from me. Like no one's my boss, so I gotta make up my own problems and then I can
Yeah,
solve them myself. It's a good
for
way, I
sure.
think.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the challenges of like, running a project on your own is
Hmm.
uh yeah, it's just not having that accountability. And like um if you don't see the other people, like if you're not working with somebody else and they're not waiting for the results of your work, then it's so hard sometimes to get motivated because you're like, well, what am I doing this for? I can push the deadline. I can, just not do this at all. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's easy to say that. Whereas if you're even sometimes just like working in an office with other people, like you feel like you're, um, part of something.
And I feel like a lot of people want to do stuff, and 90% of those people don't actually do it. So also like the thought in my mind like, oh, just me doing this is ahead of everyone else who doesn't do it. So
Yeah.
if I do it, the chances of me succeeding is gonna be way higher, is what I tell myself too. I think it's a good mindset at least.
I agree. And that's one of my like challenges as an artist is like I haven't been doing art for that long. Like it's, not seriously anyway. Like
Mhm.
my mom was an artist and so I grew up like painting with her, but not well. I was a kid. And like my serious artist like phase has only been since really 2020. It's
Mhm.
like, I have a lot of imposter syndrome and insecurity around that. And there are days when I have to tell myself like I'm just gonna get this done. Like it's not gonna be good. It's just gonna be finished, and I'm gonna get it out there.
Mhm.
And the next one will be better. And I think that's a helpful way to look at it. I struggle sometimes with figure drawing, and like drawing people for me is just the hardest thing because I'll do
Yeah.
it like this is wrong. It doesn't look good. Like this person's neck is way too long. Their torso is way too short. It makes no sense at all. Um, and what I tell myself in those moments is like, okay, I'm gonna do a really bad drawing. Like I'm gonna do an awful one. I'm gonna, intentionally, it's gonna suck. And somehow, that really helps. But it's a similar kind of thing. Like you're doing it, right? You're getting
Mhm.
yourself to do it.
So how do you practice to draw? Do you go to like figure classes?
I would like to more. When I was in, animation school and like VFX school, I did hundreds of hours of figure drawing, like so much of it.
Mhm.
So I got a lot of my practice there. I like to sometimes do figure drawing like at home. So like there's a YouTube channel called Just Draw Party.
Mhm.
And it's like every Saturday they have just like figure poses, like clothed you know, poses, and they do like a couple of 30 seconds, like a couple of 1 minutes, and like a 2 minute and a 5 minute or something like that. And so sometimes I'll do that. But sometimes these days it's more about like I'm trying to figure out my artistic style for drawing people.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's just a lot of trial and error. Like I'm going to draw this person. Like I'd like to do little one panel cartoons. And so
Mhm.
I've been pushing myself to do one panel cartoons with people in them. And like I'm just going to draw this person in whatever figure, whatever pose I'm trying to achieve, and I'm just going to do it until it's right. And I'm going to start off really loose and sketchy and get the gesture down and, erase a lot and all this kind of stuff. Uh, and then just trial and error.
You know, you said you were in animation and VFX. It sounds like you were kind of interested in film.
Yeah. Yeah. I was interested in film. I love movies.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I love Marvel movies, right? I love all movies, but I love Marvel movies especially because they're just so visual and they're so exciting and
Mm.
there's so much cool stuff. I mean, one of my favorite movies is the original like 2008 Iron Man,
Mhm.
uh, because you get to
Yeah.
see all these super cool visual effects and like none of this stuff is real and yet it looks so real. So yeah, I was really interested in film. Um, but unfortunately, that's not the path that I took. But I think graphic novels are really interesting because they have elements of film. Like
Mm.
a graphic novel is not a storyboard. Like the storytelling in a storyboard and the storytelling in a graphic novel are very different, but they have elements that are similar, right? You have to think about like framing and composition, and I think that. thinking about camera angles in a storyboard is a very useful uh, exercise for like writing a graphic novel, illustrating a graphic novel. So yeah, there's definitely some overlap there.
Would you say you'd want your graphic novel to become a movie someday? Is that
Oh,
your
I
goal?
would love that. Sure, that would be great. You know,
Be ambitious, man.
yeah, one day that'll be great. I wouldn't say it's the end goal.
Mm,
Um, that's interesting. I haven't really thought too much about that before. I think what excites me about that is the publicity. Like if
yeah.
a graphic novel that I published turns into a movie, that means that people will know Shrimp Cult Press and people will start buying the rest of the books
Mm,
um, in a way that they wouldn't before that. Like a movie gets such reach and such promotion. I think it would be really cool to have something that I published turn into a movie.
mm,
Um, but I don't know that that's necessarily the goal. Like I'm actually thinking about it now. Like if I illustrated a graphic novel that became a movie, how would I feel about that? I think there's a certain like spotlight from that I wouldn't really like potentially. Now, would I say no to the movie deal? Absolutely not. Of course, I would find a way to deal with it.
yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of like creators whose works are more famous than them, right? That's my ideal position. Even though I have a podcast and I put my face on it and it's getting more views than my work. But like I'm just saying, originally my dream was to become like my stuff is famous and I can walk around in public and no one will recognize me.
Yeah. Oh, I totally relate to that. I never want to walk into a grocery store and be afraid that people are gonna like recognize me while I'm picking out tomatoes. Like that's not the kind of life I want to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think especially these days, like there's sort of sacrifices you have to make for pushing your work forward.
Yeah. I
But
think
yeah.
like if you'd say what position would you like to be in? Like your ideal position if you were this is let's say like fi 30 years into the future and you're as successful as you want to be, like you can humanly be no limits, what would be your ideal position in life?
Um, So the dream that I have is that um, Shrimp Cult Press is a medium-sized publishing company that employs maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 people
Mm,
and, is enough to support me and my family and those 10 to 15 people comfortably. And I think that's the dream, honestly. Um, I think there's something really nice about the community aspect of that dream. Like if Shrimp Cult Press became the next Penguin Random House, right? Uh, that Penguin Random House is like an anonymous entity. It's this big corporate entity. It's huge, and you can't really interact with it. But the beautiful thing about a smaller company is that like you can still go to conventions and stuff and talk to fans. Like I love doing that. I love going to, Fan Expo and meeting people.
mm,
Um, and I love being in a small, close-knit, collaborative setting. And I think that's the dream. Like so much of our society these days is about growth at all costs, all the time, just continuous growth. Everything has to grow all the time. Um, and I think, why? Like, why does everything have to be huge? Why does everything have to like encompass the entire world? Why do you need everyone to read your book? I care about the people around me and
mm,
in my community. So, like, if I'm successful enough to just to be happy and to create things that I love and to support the people around me, I think that's enough. And I think that sounds like a great dream.
mhm. So you want to be close enough that you can like actually have a conversation with your fans and but you're like enough that this is your full-time job and you're pretty free financially, right?
Exactly. Yep, that's the dream.
That's
That's
a good dream.
it is.
I think it's beautiful. I'm like super ambitious. So I want to be like the next James Cameron.
Yeah,
I've told this to people before, but I never actually said it on a podcast. Now people are gonna tell me like, "Oh my God, how did you not how did like that's not gonna happen." Like, well, we'll see. We'll see. So,
I mean, here's the thing is like most people aren't James Cameron, but James Cameron is James Cameron. Like you could be at that level. I think that's a great dream too. Uh,
Hmm.
I think it's about like what are you interested in? If what you want to do is create works of that magnitude, then yeah, go for it. I think
Like,
that's an incredible dream.
I think I kind of want to be, I think I'm following the path closer to, you know who Robert Kirkman is?
No. No,
Okay.
sorry.
You'll know his works, and this is why I want to be him. You know wa The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
and you know Invincible?
Hmm.
He made both of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. I should know this person.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine because see that's the beauty though. You don't know him, but you know his works. That's what I
Yeah.
want to be,
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible.
right?
Yeah.
So he started out by making comics of The Walking Dead and the comics of Invincible. Actually, Invincible came before The Walking Dead, even though The Walking Dead seems like it came before Invincible, right?
Yeah.
And like he works for Image Comics. I think he's like the executive now, but basically he's very, very stern on keeping his artistic vision, everything in his vision. Like, you know the show, The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
So when he got his comic into a show, he kept saying no to producers who wanted to change his book, his
Mm.
comic, the story. And he stuck with the producer who was like, I'll do it however you want to make it. And he fought his way into getting into the writer's room for his own show, which is interesting to me. I'm like, why do you have to fight to be in your own show's writing room? That's weird.
Yeah.
But he did that, and some scenes you'll notice is like frame by frame, the exact same as the panels in the comic book. So it's completely in his vision.
Yeah.
And I want to do that. I want to make a comic, and I want that comic to become a show like him. So that's, I'm kind of following his path very aimlessly. I'm like, I feel like I'm throwing punches, and then hopefully one of them lands.
Absolutely. Like that's the way to do it. You've got to try a bunch of different stuff. But I think that's a really interesting point is that I think some of the greatest like directors, at least, and certainly I'm sure this is true of all arts,
Mm.
have a really strong vision and fight for it. I mean, if you think about like James Cameron or David Lynch or Wes Anderson, like they all have this very specific style that
Yeah.
they're pushing for it, and a lot of them are misunderstood at first. If you like the first time you watch a David Lynch movie, you're like, really? Uh, I don't get it. But you start to realize like, wow, this he's putting a lot of thought into this. Like he sees the world in a different way. And
Mm.
I think that's what we find interesting. And you fight for it and you try a bunch of different things and then hopefully you find people who love that too.
Hmm. I mean, I try to tell myself that if I love the work, if I love making the work, someone will like reading the work,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, there are like, what is it, 8 billion people in the world right now or something like that.
Yeah.
The chances are pretty good that you can find, 10,000 of those that are super into whatever it is that you're doing. And,
Hmm.
that's interesting for me because like I'll go to Fan Expo and I see, like you said, I have a book about Kingdom of Talking Chickens, right? And I have a book about a pigeon with pizza slices for wings. And
Yeah.
I see all these people dressed in anime cosplay and they walk straight past my table. And I see people, dressed as like Darth Vader and stormtroopers and they walk straight past my table. But there are people who come over and they're like, "Oh my God, chickens with D&D, like this is the best thing ever." And they're so excited about it. And like there's this small core group of people that are super stoked. And it's about finding those people, finding the people who
Hmm.
are like interested in the same stuff that you are.
Someone was saying that it's really important to find your niche.
Yeah.
And for example, my niche for this podcast is people who want to become like writers and directors and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty tight niche. It's people who want to tell stories of themselves and want to succeed. And I think I know how to target them because I'm literally that person.
Yeah.
I'm targeting myself. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
would I listen to this? And if the answer is yes, hopefully other people will listen to this too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's so important. I've been reading slowly this book by Seth Godin called This is Marketing.
Uh-huh.
He was a publisher and he writes about a lot of different topics, but one of them is marketing. And he says something to the effect of like, if your idea appeals to everyone, then it's probably not good enough. Like you need to like you should. There's some people who your work shouldn't be for. Like, and that's okay. Like if you're not into this, that's fine. It's not for you. But if you're creating something that's really special and really wonderful, then you should have like a really targeted niche. I think that's important. A friend of mine says um, it's better to be like 1,000 people's favorite company than like 100,000 people's like 731st favorite company.
Hmm. Yeah. The 731st is like a random number.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said you're a marketing person for UBC, right?
Yeah. So I work for a small like microbiology program at UBC.
And then you market it?
Yeah, so basically what we do is this is a huge departure from everything else in my life.
Yeah.
But um so let's say you go and you get a blood test, right, at
Yeah.
some sort of testing place. Somebody needs to make sure that all the staff are trained correctly and that the machines are working correctly and that the test is being done appropriately. So there's something
Mhm.
called a proficiency testing program, which sends them like samples that we know what's in it and they don't.
Mhm.
And they tell us what they think is in it, and we tell them if they're right or not. So that's what I do is I do marketing for this small program that sells this service to testing labs.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's also like that is a departure from like even like engineering and stuff.
yeah, it is. It's a big departure, but it's
What?
interesting that like some of it overlaps, right? Like um, marketing is always about storytelling. So a lot of times at work, I'm thinking about the story that I'm telling about our company and about our product and the stories of our customers and what they're interested in.
Mhm.
Uh, and I mean, there's some engineering overlap too, but that's more skills-based stuff, working on the website and, databases and all that. But yeah.
And you have to do the same thing for your comic company too.
Yeah, it's true. And I've actually found that some of the work that I do at UBC has informed the work that I do for my company. So I have to write a newsletter for work and I have to do social media posts at work. And granted, those social media posts are on LinkedIn at UBC, and for my company, it's more on Instagram. But
Mhm.
the tools that I've developed to post more frequently and to like design my plan for what I'm going to post on social media are transferable between the two.
Mhm.
So like I think everything kind of informs everything else. Like when you're changing careers, it's easy to feel like, oh man, I spent 10 years working on this software engineering career and like getting really good at it and I'm throwing it all away. But the truth is that I learned a lot of stuff that is transferable to a lot of different disciplines. I think that's,
Yes.
that's always true.
Everything is either a lesson or a gift.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I think that's true.
Hmm. You know, have you ever heard of Buffer before?
Buffer,
Yeah.
in what sense?
So it's a site that lets you schedule all your social media posts.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I used like Hootsuite for a while, which is a similar kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Um and yeah, I mean like that stuff I think is really useful. And I know like if you're, for Instagram and Facebook, like Meta Business Suite will let you schedule stuff. I think for me it's more about like conceptually what am I scheduling? Like uh you want like a really good ratio between like content and ads because if everything is an ad obviously people are going to tune you out, but if you're producing interesting content, then when you do release an ad people might actually follow it, they might be there to see it. So like I use a spreadsheet basically to schedule like, okay, I'm gonna post like content about this, I'm gonna post content about this and on these days, and then I'm gonna throw a sneaky little ad in there and see if I can, get some people to click on it. And yeah, like just thinking about what the like landscape and composition of these social media posts are, that's kind of the strategic work for me.
So the chicken story was like your friend's idea, right?
So the chicken story was my idea actually. So when I
Okay.
started the company, I needed a book to just make the company real, and Jared hadn't finished Pizza Pigeon yet. So I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna like write an illustrated D&D module, and I'm gonna make it into something that's a little bit different than I think already exists out there. Like it's gonna be kind of silly and fun and goofy.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna spend a lot of time in the illustration because like that's the piece that I want to be like focusing on in this company.
Yeah.
So I spent, I think it was 6 months, 4 to 6 months, like writing and illustrating this campaign and like testing it. And of course, at the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, it'll be easy. You know, I don't have to come up with a plot. I just have to come up with all these silly ideas and it'll be fine. And then I
Mhm.
found out that like, oh, I have to like actually play test this with people, and I have to play test it multiple times, and then I have to fix things, and I have to edit, and then I have to like come up with all these stats for characters and all that kind of stuff. And it took a
Yeah.
long time. But I think it's in the end, it probably still was faster than actually illustrating a whole graphic novel, especially at my like level of artistic confidence. But yeah, it wasn't a simple endeavor by any means.
Mhm. Where would you say your artistic confidence is right now?
Ooh, are we talking on a scale of like 1 to 10 or?
10 being like my thing is the best thing in the world, and then 0 being like I can't write and will never write anything.
Yeah, okay. Um, huh. That's really interesting because like I think confidence and skill are disconnected. Like you can be really, really good and really, really not confident. Um, I would say my artistic confidence is somewhere in the middle. You know, maybe we're talking like a 6.
That's pretty good.
Well, thank you. You know, every time I go to illustrate something, uh, it's a bit of a struggle because I have to fight that voice that's like, oh, this sucks, it's bad, like nobody's gonna like it. But I think I'm overcoming it. I would like to get to like, a 7 or an 8 where I can just sort of sit down and, oh, I'm just gonna draw something now and just, whip out whatever it is. And I think I don't know, I'm starting to get there. It depends on the subject too. Like I
Mhm.
said, people my confidence is maybe a 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say your artistic confidence is?
Mine is mine is really high.
Yeah?
I
Good.
I try to act like a 10 as in every situation. Okay, when I'm speaking to people, I try to act like a 10 because I have to be the biggest hyper for my own work,
Yeah.
right? But I think at home, I'm more of a 7 or an 8. But even in every situation, I try to be as confident as I possibly can because I know that's the most impressive trait. Okay, it's like this. You know when someone says something, your first instinct is kind of to believe them because you feel that if I were in their shoes, that has to be real for me to say it,
Yeah.
right? So if you're confident and you say stuff, people will tend to believe you. I'm not saying lie, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like if you're more confident, it's easier to be convincing.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I
So
absolutely agree.
I'd say around 7 to 10 when I try to get people on my podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great, especially like a lot of artists struggle with confidence, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and I think it's like confidence also is a skill. Like confidence is something that you can cultivate. And
Hmm.
like a lot of times it takes a lot of inner work and thinking about yourself and thinking about like what that voice of imposter syndrome is trying to tell you and kind of having a conversation with it. Um,
Yeah.
and then also, like we were talking about before, just like fake it until you make it. If you can just put that confidence on and just wear it out in public, even if you feel like it doesn't fit, a lot of times it just gets easier.
I mean, I think I have a really bad case of imposter syndrome, honestly. I just try to mask it so that because it's not a good like I can't just come up and be like, "Oh, I'm trying to be this, but I'm not this yet." So like, do you still wanna talk to me? That's weird, right? Not weird, but I know I can tell if someone said that to me, it wouldn't be convincing. So I know I shouldn't say it to other people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that fine line between like authenticity and presentation.
Hmm.
Like you're right. Like if you come up to somebody and you're kind of uh like down and down on yourself and demure and you're like, well, can you do this favor for me? Like people are probably maybe they'll say yes, but they're not going to be
They're not
really
going to
into it, and a lot
say.
of people are going to say
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. I think authenticity, being authentic is trying to be the best version, the most ideal version of yourself. That's what I,
Yeah,
because you can't, like, being yourself, it's subjective, okay? If someone's like, oh, I'm lazy, I'm doing absolutely nothing, but this is me, I'm being my authentic self, but I want to be something else. I'm like, I think the version that you want to be is your authentic self, not who you actually think you are in the moment.
yeah. One of the things that I've realized recently is that I used to feel like if I was putting on confidence when I wasn't confident, that I was kind of lying, that I was being inauthentic. But I think you're right. I think the truth is that any story has a lot of different sides. Like, and you're not going to tell somebody the totality of a story. Like, if you're talking to somebody about something that happened, you're never going to tell them every little detail of the story so they get a complete and fully accurate, truthful picture of what happened, right? You're going to pick details, and the details that you pick, while they all might be true, uh, inform how people are going to see the story. And
Hmm.
so when you're presenting yourself as a confident person to, anyone, you're choosing to highlight certain details about yourself. I am an artist. I am doing this thing. I am doing this, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
instead of like the details that you leave out, which are, I'm really insecure about it. I'm not sure it's gonna work. I'm really scared of failing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm not gonna come up to someone and be like, "Hi, I don't have many followers right now." Like you're not gonna say that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the details you lead with.
Yeah, it's just you're just gonna be like, "Hi, I have a podcast. Would you like to get?" Not yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I really try to get to know the person before I ask them though, because I don't. It doesn't matter how famous the person I'm talking to is. I only want people who I genuinely like talking to, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
Because what's gonna happen? I don't like talking to them. They're gonna get on my podcast, and I'm gonna have another bad conversation.
Yeah. Which doesn't make great content, does it?
Exactly. Because the whole point is, my motto is, if I enjoy talking, people will enjoy listening to it. If I don't enjoy talking, no one will want to listen to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's called podcast for fun, right? It's not called podcast for boring and awkward silences. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
You know what? Sometimes it does happen though. It's inevitable to an extent. Sometimes there's like bad Wi-Fi, and I'm having a good conversation, and it just like ruins the pacing. And I just
Oh,
go like,
yeah.
"Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?"
It's true. I feel like there has to be a genre of podcast out there where it's just that. It's just, some sort of really niche, like like postmodern podcast where it's just connection issues and like trying to troubleshoot the microphone and like people are 3 seconds behind each other. But yeah, I would listen to that for about 5 minutes.
That would be so funny for like, yeah, you're right. It'd be funny for the first 5 minutes, and then you'd be like, okay, that's enough. That's
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, I get the joke. I'm gonna move on now, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes I listen back to my own podcast for like a long period of time because see, I enjoy talking about it, so I enjoy listening back to it, And
yeah.
I'll make reels about it anyways. So I just take it as work or something. Probably gonna listen back to this like 50 times too.
Yeah, I wondered about that because sometimes I don't like watching video of myself, which is, makes all the Instagram stuff that I'm doing right now kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious how you feel about it. Like, do you enjoy watching your podcast back, or like, do you see areas where you're like, oh man, I should have said this, or I should have thought about that, or how does that go?
Honestly, I don't cringe looking at myself. I cringe hearing myself
Yeah,
all the time.
totally.
I'm like, why did I say that? Why didn't I say this? And it is really cringy because I'm kind of trying to it's inevitable. You're in front of a camera. You're gonna put a bit of a facade on yourself, whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah.
And like I'm insecure about me using too many filler words or the lack of articulation I have at times. So I'm trying to improve that.
Listen,
But
I'm already panicking about the number of times that I've said the word interesting in this podcast, so I get it.
I said the
The
word like.
process has begun.
I know. So you're like you just think to yourself, I should stop saying it, and then you become conscious about it, and it becomes awkward. But
Yeah.
it's fine because I just remind myself that no one cares. So even if I do get embarrassed, no one's gonna like that thought doesn't like pass on to you. You're not gonna know when I was like, oh, I almost fell off my chair just now. Like, you're not gonna know that,
Yeah.
right? So it's fine. I tried to do an opposite. I tried to be aware of how other people act, not myself.
Yeah.
So then I'm out of my shell, and also I can listen to people way better because I'm very aware of how they're talking and everything. And also I can accommodate to their, if like I can sense if you're like feeling awkward. I'm an empath. I'm kidding. I don't know. But I'm just saying, if I focus on the person I'm talking to and not on myself, it's way better and way easier to talk to people.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like a
absolutely.
skill I acquired. It's a bit hard on Zoom though, because like I can only see like above your shoulder, right? So I can't tell if
Yeah.
you're like feeding your finger or something, but
Yeah. Well, it's tough too because I find that the lag that a Zoom call introduces makes that a difficult process.
mhm.
But I totally agree, and that's how you get good at conversation, right? Is like they say like we have two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. Like that's
Exactly.
yeah, it's a good skill for everything. I find
But
too like I've been doing improv for the past like year or so. Like I did it in high school and I loved it, but I just kind of put it down for like 10 years and I've
mm,
started doing it again, and it just it's really good at getting you like out of your shell and letting you trust yourself and um, learning to embrace failure, like in a lot of different aspects of life. Like
mhm,
you go to an improv show and somebody makes a mistake, it's endearing, it's funny, it's a vulnerable moment, and I think it's really helpful in like teaching you to not judge yourself for your mistakes in everyday life. I think it's great.
mhm. And I mean, how am I supposed to improve if I don't keep challenging myself, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
And someone was asking me, "Oh, don't you ever get worried you're gonna say something that's like gonna get you, attacked or something?" Yes, every single day, every single time I'm on a podcast, but I have to take risks or else I can't get any results.
Yeah, like you can't live in fear of what somebody else is going to think.
hmm I can't control how other people perceive me to an extent. I can control how I perceive myself. So I try to be as positive as I can because at the end of the day, it's about how you look at things, right? If everyone's bullying you but you don't notice and you think, "Oh, everyone's giving me attention, they want me so much," then that's how you're gonna see and that's how happy you're gonna be.
Yeah, and
It's
sometimes that turns into the reality, right?
mm-hmm. You get what you give out, so you just have to remember, guys, be a little bit delusional. It's good for you if you
Of
just
course, a little bit, 10%.
10%. Stay grounded in reality, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah, don't go with like 40% or 60%. That's too far. Keep it around 10 and
Mhm.
but that 10% is important.
It is. So yeah, that's my motto, I'd say.
Yeah. That's a good motto.
Thank you. So, Peter, what's one advice you give to the aspiring storytellers watching this right now?
Oh, okay. Uh yes. So I think the most important advice that I have for storytellers is think about why we care. Um, I think that's the most important part of story is like, why do we care about these characters? Why do we care about this story?
Mm,
Um, why is it interesting? Um, I've seen a lot of media where they sort of jump right into the storyline because that's what they're excited about. And
mm,
like we're into conflict right away, you know, like the characters are fighting between each other and all this kind of stuff because that's what the artist or the writer was really excited about is this particular moment.
Mm.
but it doesn't land because we don't care yet. We don't know these characters. We don't know why they're fighting. We don't know where they are. We don't know what's going on. You have to take the time to let the audience build a relationship with your characters and with your story and to care about them. Um, I remember I watched like Falcon and Winter Soldier, the
Mhm.
Marvel series, and it kind of did that. Like it launched right into everything that was happening. Like Falcon and Winter Soldier are like fighting each other. They don't like each other, and it felt like they hadn't earned it to me because I wasn't a big fan of those characters, and I hadn't like grown attached to them yet because I only watched like the main sort of Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So it just didn't land for me. I was like, why am I watching this? I don't care. These guys are just bickering for no reason. It feels like there's no consequence. Like, why don't you guys just go your own separate ways and do something else? Like, I don't care. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's my advice is like focus on why we care and getting the audience invested and what the audience wants to see. Like we want to see we want to care about these characters and then we want to see the day that something's different and we want to see how that's resolved. And yeah, I think that's just the backbone of story. If you do that, then people will be interested.
That's beautiful.
Thank
How do you think you do that for your story?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's about, I mean, first of all, it's a matter of practice.
Mm.
Like, just through practice, you develop the instinct of setting up a character rather than just using a character as a tool for whatever you want to do.
Mm.
Um, I think the other thing that really helps is just an outline. Like anytime I write a story, I write an outline. And there's like the Pixar story spine is one way to write an outline, where it's like literally just a template and you fill in the blanks. And it's I forget exactly what it is, but like once upon a time there was a blank who blank, and then suddenly one day blank happened, and then blank, right? It's a simple outline, but it makes sure that you have all of the components and make sure that you have like a setup or a platform
Mm.
that is going to get us involved in the character and that we're going to care. Um, and all those pieces, like writing it out in short form ahead of time is really helpful.
Mm.
Uh, and then, the other thing is like I write about characters that I love. So, like we talked about before, if I present my passion for these characters through the work, then hopefully that will resonate with other people and they'll also care about the characters.
Yes. What was the conflict for your story again? I know it's about brunch and chickens and chicken with pizza wings.
Yeah. So, so writing D&D modules is a little bit different because you're not really creating the story. You're setting a bunch of stuff up for people to interact with. So,
Mm, okay.
yeah. So, this is kind of the one case in which things are a little bit different. Like you still have to care about the characters, but it's a little harder to do. Like you're
Yeah.
relying on the person running the game to actually embody that and make you care about the characters. But uh, the conflict is that there's this kingdom of talking chickens,
Hmm.
and down the way, a tavern opens that starts serving like, lots of egg-based menu items. And people start stealing eggs from the Kingdom of Talking Chickens because there's just so much demand for egg-based things that they just end up stealing these eggs. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of where the story starts.
So you're trying to like get the eggs back?
Yeah, you're trying to figure out what's happening. Like, what's this tavern's deal? Like, it's such an aggressive thing. Why are they suddenly using all these eggs? Like, they're clearly right down the road. Like, that seems like a really mean thing to do. Why are they doing it? How can we get them to stop?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So modules are like the setup of a campaign, right?
Yeah. So basically, D&D or any kind of role-playing game is a set of rules for how you role play the characters.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like playing pretend when you were a kid, you just sort of describe whatever is going on, except that now there are rules. So if you want to try to do something, you have to roll some dice for it, and then there are rules to decide whether or not it happens.
Hmm.
So, uh, you take your set of rules, whether it's D&D or Pathfinder or like whatever else, and then you need a story to go with those rules. So you need an environment that you're actually interacting with. So
Mhm.
that's what my module is it lays out the setting. So it describes all the places that are in the kingdom. There's like I forget actually right now what's in it, but I know that there's like a gift kiosk that sells chicken hats, right? So
Mhm.
like it describes the person who owns it and what items he has for sale and like what he looks like and what the cart looks like and all this kind of stuff. So as you're playing, the person who's, the DM who's reading through all this stuff and describing it to the players
Yeah.
can uh, come up with a description without having to just come up with it all in their head.
Okay, okay. Because I've heard like some people spend like years creating a campaign, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, D&D has been around for I think 50 years now, a little over 50 years. And there are campaigns I've heard of that have been running for like 20 or 30 years, and I'm sure longer than that,
What the
which
hell?
is wild. I mean, I can't imagine. But like if that's the thing that you do, every other Thursday night with all your friends, like it's like anything. It's an excuse to sit around with friends and just hang out and have fun. So
Mhm.
yeah, I could totally see it. But I can't imagine like getting people to commit to like every Thursday night for 30 years. Like scheduling it's such a nightmare that I really
90% of
admire.
it's Zoom calls, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's insane. I think I kind of tried to do that when I was younger, but it didn't last because
Like
everyone's
a,
busy.
a role-playing game or
Yeah,
like a
kind
regular
of.
scheduled event.
I would just do it like around the campfire, and it would be like a really short game, you
Oh
know?
yeah.
I was like, what would you do? Roll the dice right now. But like and then the rules were all over the place, and we didn't really know what we were doing. It was kind of fun. It's a lot of imagination, which is like the the pinnacle of storytelling, to be honest. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I love the like freedom of when you're younger and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna make up this rule now. I'm just gonna go for it.
Hmm. I kind of miss it, but I kind
Yeah,
of still have it. We're drawing and writing stories.
exactly. We can bring it back. The rules don't matter. Let's make them up.
Exactly. The rules are, I mean, there are, I say there's unspoken rules in life and you have to follow them, but you can also make your own rules. That's the beauty of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Peter, where can our awesome listeners find your work?
Okay, well, so we have a website which is shrimpcult.press. We also are on Instagram at Shrimp Cult Press and Blue Sky. Uh, if you search Shrimp Cult Press, the Blue Sky handles are like so long. I don't know how people describe them yet. So
Mhm.
just search for Shrimp Cult Press and we'll show up.
And it'll also be in the description so you can just like click on
Oh,
it.
fantastic. We'll go there. Go down to the
Yeah.
description and click on the Blue Sky link and follow us.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Podcast for Fun. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us and sharing your incredible insights.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow storytelling enthusiasts. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to explore, you can drop them in the comments or connect with me on any of my social medias at Podcast for Fun. Until next time, keep creating, keep dreaming, and we'll see you on the next episode of Podcast for Fun.